The F1 world is full of surprises, and recent drama with Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren team has made things even more interesting. Did you know why he quit the Brazil Grand Prix? Do you think he left willingly? McLaren has found the reason behind Daniel Ricciardo's power loss in Brazil. Let's find out what it is. When did the problem start? When Daniel Ricciardo retired suddenly, everyone was shocked. No one had expected the star racer to give up this early on in his career. And they were right. Ricciardo's McLaren team later revealed that the racer was forced to quit the Brazil Grand Prix. The Australian racer has managed to make a ton of accolades during his short career, but he made a blunder once and was asked to leave immediately. He was asked to retire because his MCL35M was experiencing power loss. It came as a shock to Ricciardo as well, who was optimistic about finishing ahead of Ferrari rivals Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Did you know that he was expected to finish as high as 5th in the Grand Prix won by Lewis Hamilton? But even though he was outperformed by Ferrari all weekend, his team's strategy of running a one-stop race on harder tires was a stroke of genius before the game. But things went wrong and the day was ruined instantly by the engine's fading power. As you might have expected, McLaren investigated the whole situation thoroughly and found a crack had formed within the engine, specifically in components related to its power unit installation. This proved deadly for the engine and Ricciardo's race. What did Andreas Seidl find? After finding faults with the engine, Andreas Seidl was required to make an official statement regarding the whole ordeal. If you didn't already know, Seidl is the current McLaren team principal. He said the team will continue to investigate why the problem occurred, but the most likely cause was loss of power on the track. According to him, the initial investigation discovered a technical issue within the engine. It was a crack on the chassis side of the power unit installation, which is now under investigation. He also said that the team would give another update in the next week. Sadly, this whole drama ended Ricciardo's run of 34 consecutive races that he reached the finish line in. He was called into the garage on lap 51, which was just 20 laps short of the checkered flag near the final lap. Ricciardo said the problems experienced in this race were relatively new since he had not experienced such issues since he joined the team for the start of the 2021 season. According to him, we were looking like we were going to get a few points and the race was going pretty well. We were coping pretty well. Potentially a one-stop strategy could have worked out for us strongly. He also said it definitely started as a good day and he was even thinking it would be better than the past couple of races. But things got out of control very quickly and he wasn't able to do much about it. The sadness that ensued. The whole situation capped off a miserable weekend for McLaren since Lando Norris was only able to score one championship point after finishing 10th in the race. It seemed as if the team was struggling to find a quick setup through the weekend's qualifying and sprint races. But sadly, Ricciardo dropped from a shocking 8th to an even worse 11th during the sprint. This happened after he dropped down the field in the opening lap. But people are looking forward to the next chapter of 2021's gripping title battle that will take place in Qatar soon. Who topped the charts recently? In other F1 news, here are some racers that have topped the charts and managed to impress fans and critics all over the world. One of them is Lewis Hamilton, who pulled off one of his best ever victories in Brazil. He managed to cut the championship gap to 14 points. As you might already know, Hamilton just had one of his strongest weekends ever in the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. But even though a 5-place engine penalty supposedly put him on the back foot going into the race, he managed to create a victory for himself. It was truly a 10 out of 10 performance, and people were amazed by Hamilton's potential. Another racer in the spotlight these days is, of course, Max Verstappen. If you notice his record, you'll notice that Verstappen has been driving at a consistently high level throughout the season. This is what gave him all the attention. But things weren't so great for him recently when his Red Bull team principal, Christian Horner, seemed to deem his Mercedes unraceable. Even though the term sounds like a snide remark to hurt and undermine the racer, Verstappen gave it his all. He also put up a typically tough defense that eventually had to be undone through some crazy pace from his rival Hamilton. He managed to win second place in Brazil and held off Valtteri Bottas. Undeniably, this is some great driving from Verstappen. Who else is doing well? Charles Leclerc is another name doing notably well these days. Although he was behind Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz in qualifying, Charles Leclerc's race pace was solid throughout the race. And even though a 7th place finish in the sprint wasn't ideal for him at the time, Leclerc tried his best. He also kept himself in the running for a sizable haul in the Grand Prix by avoiding turn 1 contact and passing Sainz early on to stay ahead of the midfield. If you notice closely, you'll also see him consolidating Ferrari's lead over McLaren during the race. But he isn't the only one trying his best to win. Pierre Gasly has been showing off his skills on the track as well. He topped the midfield in qualifying but struggled later during the sprint. And even though he had a soft shot start, both Ferrari and the McLaren of Lando Norris breezed past him before he could make any efforts to win. Soon after this, Lewis Hamilton demoted him to 8th position during the game on Saturday, but even though he was unable to do much against Hamilton on the sprint track, Gasly rallied up to keep Aston Martin's Sebastian Vettel and both the Alpines away. This turned out to be a crucial performance for his team, who are currently equal on points with the latter's squad heading to Qatar. What about Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and the two Alpines? The person enjoying themselves right now is Ferrari's Carlos Sainz. Did you know that he has now completed 12 race weekends in the points? This is more than any other driver except for Verstappen. Sainz led his soft compounds to an amazing third in the last sprint, but he ended up having an unlucky collision with McLaren's rival Lando Norris. As you might have expected, this compromised his start to the Grand Prix and left him behind Sergio Perez and his teammate Leclerc. But despite all the problems and the dangerous collision, he still managed to finish 6th. This means that he was ahead of the AlphaTauri of Gasly, which led to a double scoring weekend for the Scuderia. Both the Alpine drivers also had a great Saturday when they pulled off a difficult one-stop strategy in Brazil. As expected, Esteban Ocon was leading his teammate Fernando Alonso by the flag. But it wasn't easy out there, and Ocon had to take his place off McLaren's Daniel Ricciardo in the sprint. He managed to keep his game consistent and showed some pretty great teamwork with Alonso. He even tried to offset the tired manage of Gasly, who was right ahead, but as you might already know, nothing good came out of that. Still, Ocon managed a brilliant double point score for Alpine to keep them on par with AlphaTauri, Bottas, and Perez. Valtteri Bottas was also one of the best players this time around, and he did exactly the job Mercedes needed from him this weekend. He managed to top the sprint and took a rapid start when Hamilton was suddenly pushed back to the back of the grid. After this, his teammate went to rapidly attack the Red Bulls that were ahead. Bottas himself benefited from a magnificent pit stop during a virtual safety car on Sunday, but that went a little wrong when he was unable to keep the speed going, and as soon as he switched pace, he ended up finishing 3rd instead of 1st. But all Bottas' fans should know that he was just 3 seconds behind Verstappen at the flag, so the race could have very well been his. But finishing 3rd was a great achievement for the racer as well, and he was overjoyed with the results. Another player on the field this time was Sergio Perez, who also did an admirable job this weekend, even though he was faced with difficult circumstances. The Mexican racer was keeping a steady pace with Verstappen right before Sainz beat him in the sprint, but he aced the Grand Prix with his determination and also picked up the fastest lap bonus at the end. What do you think about these performances? How did you react to Ricciardo's sudden retirement? Let us know in the comments below. Like this video, and we'll see you the next time.